Mark, would you like to begin?
Thank you, Linda. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for a timely conversation about a topic of tremendous interest and concern right now: Jewish life on college campuses. I'm Mark Merkovitz, the Executive Director of the Jewish Federation of Princeton Mercer Bucks. Our federation is pleased to co-sponsor tonight's program with our longtime partner, the Jewish Community Foundation of Greater Mercer. Before introducing our esteemed guests from both Rutgers and Princeton universities, let me explain our format. We will hear general reflections from both campus clergy, Rabbi Esther Reed and Rabbi Gil Steinloff, and then they will be joined in a roundtable conversation by current undergraduate students where my colleague Linda Mizell, the Executive Director of the Jewish Community Foundation, will pose questions for all to respond. There will be an opportunity for our audience to also ask questions. Please use the chat box at any time to submit your questions. And now the introductions. Rabbi Esther Reed joined Rutgers University Hillel in 2001 and has served in different important roles, most recently as Chief Experience Officer. She is a graduate of Bryn Mawr College and has a master's degree in Jewish Women's Studies and her rabbinic ordination from the Jewish Theological Seminary. In October 2022, Rabbi Reed testified about anti-Semitism on campus before a U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Homeland Security. Tonight, Rabbi Esther will be joined by Rutgers student Mitch Wolf, class of 2025. Rabbi Gil Steinloff joined the Center for Jewish Life, also known as CJL, at Princeton University as Executive Director and Jewish Chaplain a year and a half ago. Having previously served as a rabbi for two congregations in the Washington, D.C. area, Kol Shalom in Rockville, Maryland, and Addis, Israel in D.C. Rabbi Gil founded the Jewish Teen Leadership Institute and also created the Hineni Fellowship for LGBTQ Jewish leadership. Tonight, Rabbi Gil will be joined by Princeton student Judy Levy, class of 2024. Rabbi Reed, thank you for kicking things off with your reflections.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you to the Jewish Community Foundation of Greater Mercer and the Jewish Federation of Princeton Mercer Bucks for organizing and sponsoring this program this evening. It's a pleasure to be here again with my friends and colleagues. So my introduction, I want to give a little bit of an overview about Jewish life at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. I'm located in New Brunswick, which is the largest of the campuses. There's also a Rutgers in Camden and a Rutgers in Newark. But just in New Brunswick alone, we have the second largest Jewish undergraduate population in the country, with an estimated 6,400 Jewish undergraduates and about 1,000 Jewish graduate students. And so it's an incredibly large and active Hillel with multiple events per day. We have a gorgeous 40,000 square foot facility that opened just a few years ago that has a kosher dairy cafe on the first floor, programming spaces, a very large dining hall that can seat up to 500, multiple other types of programming rooms that can also be used as prayer spaces and other things. We have a wellness center and we have a game room. It's a beautiful and fun space to be in. So I encourage, if you haven't been to visit Rutgers Hillel, that you do come and visit us. In terms of our programming, we have a wide range of different kinds of programs, multiple events per day. We have the kinds of events you would expect. We have religious services. Our Orthodox services meet 3 times a day. I call us a full service Hillel. And we also have educational events, challah baking every Thursday. Friday nights, there's Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox services, followed by a Shabbat dinner where everybody comes together and has one Shabbat meal together. But then we have things that maybe you wouldn't think that we would have. We have a club for the Jewish students from the former Soviet Union, a crafting circle, a Jewish pre-law society, a political commission, our LGBTQ student organization. We run mental health workshops. We have a Jewish a cappella group. We have a theater company that you don't have to be Jewish to join the theater company, but they don't have any rehearsals or performances on Shabbat or Jewish holidays. So, and that's just a sampling. There's a lot more going on, but very strong, rich, diverse Jewish life in Rutgers. And that's only within Hillel. There's also a Chabad on campus that's very large and active, and other Jewish organizations as well. I will say, since I've been at Rutgers for a long time, that I have seen over the years challenging times like the ones that we're experiencing now. And there have been wars in the past, but since October 7th, it's been different. And I know we're going to talk about that more when we get into our roundtable discussion and Q&A opportunity. But I will say that it's the first time I saw the Muslim chaplain, who I've worked closely with for 8 years, get up and lead the chant from the bullhorn, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." And to his credit, when I met with him a week later and we talked about what that means for the Jewish community when we hear that, he has not led that chant since. His students still do, but he's not the one up there leading it. The opportunities for interfaith processing and coming together for reflection have also been very powerful, where we have been able, the Muslim community and the Jewish community have been able to come together and process what this experience has been like for each of our communities. We've also run processing sessions that are just internal to Hillel, where Jewish students can be in a Jewish-only space. Feels like a safe space, along with folks from the counseling center or our social work intern, to be able to talk about and process what it's like to be a Jewish student on campus right now. And for some of our students, how they're feeling having friends and family members who are in the military currently or were affected by what happened on October 7th. Some of our students are friends with Omer Nutra, who is a hostage at the moment. Some of our students are friends with Idan Alexander, who's also a hostage. So there's a lot that our students are processing. And we'll probably get into it a little bit later, but certainly the activism of the pro-Palestinian community since October 7th has been different with this war than with previous wars. I will say, for the experience of Jewish students, different students experience these incidents differently. I will say that the student president last year from Rutgers Hillel, a student who wore yarmulke every day and had tzitzit that he wore, he said that in his 4 years, he never experienced anti-Semitism. And then you have other students who are, unfortunately, sometimes do experience anti-Semitism, which we will talk about more. So thank you very much.
Rabbi Gil?
We can't hear you. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for the Jewish Community Foundation and the Jewish Federation for hosting this very important event this evening. And it is an honor and a pleasure to be here together with Julie Levy from Princeton to talk about Jewish life at Princeton University. Rabbi Reed has described this extraordinary, large and diverse Jewish population at Rutgers. We are, in terms of scale, kind of the opposite end of that scale. At Princeton, we are a lot smaller in general. The entire student body is much, much smaller at Princeton than it is at Rutgers, as is the Jewish community. There are several hundred Jewish students who are actively engaged, and a total population of several hundred Jewish students on Princeton's campus. That being said, we are small but mighty on Princeton University's campus. We are called the Center for Jewish Life. And one of the many blessings that we have at Princeton University is that the university has partnered with Hillel and with the Jewish community on campus over the past 30 plus years to create this center on campus that is fully supported by the university. And what that means is the building is actually owned by Princeton University. Our dining hall, our kosher dining facility, is entirely run and operated and kosher supervised all through the auspices of Princeton University. And the Princeton University Hillel is contracted as the organization that represents the Jewish community on campus. So it is up to us to kind of make sure that the program on campus is active and vibrant and diverse. And despite our relatively smaller size, it is wonderful to hear all of the parallels between the Princeton Jewish community and the Rutgers Jewish community. Similarly, we have a very strong and active Orthodox community, three minyanim a day. We're also full service. We have an incredibly strong and vibrant koach, or conservative Jewish community, as well as the Reform Kesher community that are active and engaged in many, many ways. Similar, we also have other points of entry and engagement on many kinds of walks of life. Particularly through different kinds of Jewish identities that students can connect with. For example, we have JLATs, which is a student for Jewish students with Latinx backgrounds. We have MEJA, which is students who are from Middle Eastern backgrounds. JAsians, students who are from Asian backgrounds. LGBTQJ for LGBTQ students, and all kinds of points of contact in with many activities, study breaks, trips, and activities across campus that happen as part, and as well a wonderful Jewish a cappella group, Kolenu, which Julie Levy here is a fantastic member as well. So she can speak to all kinds of different aspects of Jewish life when you will have the pleasure of hearing from her. So we are very, very blessed. Princeton is incredibly interested in sustaining a vibrant Jewish community, so much so that even in the interest of supporting the observant Jewish community, for example, I'm just working right now with expanding the Eruv. The Eruv is for those who aren't aware, is a line that goes around a public area that creates a kind of space within which you can carry things on the Sabbath. And Princeton, for many years, has had an Eruv that surrounds the campus. And because the campus is now expanding, the university supports it and is expanding it so that more observant people can live in the Jewish community. So there is a strong vested interest in making sure that the Jewish community is alive, well, and thriving on Princeton's campus. And in terms of just like every Jewish community and Jewish organization in this country and around the world, everything changed. We had a seismic shift on October 7th, of course. And obviously this great shadow has been cast over the entire Jewish world, and Princeton is certainly no exception. From the devastation and the loss of friends and family who were immediately affected in Israel, to the fallout and the increase in anti-Israel and sometimes anti-Semitic activity that we see happening on Princeton's campus has been a reality that we have dealt with. What I can say about that is that while Princeton deals with the same issues that every college campus is dealing with, we are fortunate in that we are not as bad as a lot of parallel institutions in terms of both anecdotally and also documented students, not as many students reporting that they are feeling like they're living in an anti-Semitic environment, nor feeling unsafe, nor feeling that they have to hide their Jewish identity, which doesn't mean there aren't students who aren't reporting experiences. There are students who report feeling uncomfortable with things that professors or professors, teaching assistants can say in class or put on social media. There have been incidents that have been reported happening on and around our campus, but I would say that the vast majority of our students feel safe, and not only safe, but also, and most importantly, supported, not only by the CJL, but by the university. And I think that that's a really important thing. The university has been extremely responsive. Part of our job as Hillel directors is we have to maintain a very strong and very real relationship with university administration and faculty. And I know that I'm sure Rabbi Reed is as well, constantly in touch and making sure that the concerns of our students are represented. And I found on Princeton's campus the administration to be extraordinarily responsive and very, very concerned about how our Jewish students are faring during these difficult times. And even more important than that, our students are strong and undaunted. They are outspoken, they are organized, they are letting their Jewish presence be known. They are actively encouraging strong dialogue everything from high-level discourse about Israel, inviting multiple prospective speakers from different backgrounds to address the community, to grassroots connections. I randomly was talking to a group of students who were having a trivia night with the Muslim students. And they took me totally by surprise, and I was talking to the imam on campus, and he was surprised too. But we were pleasantly surprised that the students are sort of naturally looking for common ground where they can avoid the political tensions and actually just engage with each other as human beings. So these kind of anecdotal stories are incredibly encouraging. We are facing a BDS campaign underway right now on our campus. So it's not that we're immune to these problems, but I'd say that we're in a very strong place to respond well to these, even though it is challenging our students, of course, and creating tensions between political left and right within the Jewish community on these issues, which I think is another issue which we probably should cover as part of our conversation tonight as well. But I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Rabbi Reed and Rabbi Steinroth. We're going to begin what we're now calling our roundtable. I will be asking questions. Julie and Mitch, we hope that you will be a part of this conversation as well. So the first question is, at universities, at colleges and beyond, there seems to be a lack of respect regarding how we have hard conversations on topics where people disagree. What can the university, the Hillel Center for Jewish Life, what can we do to promote these respectful dialogue where people will actually listen? So again, this is a roundtable. Maybe Julie, do you want to start with it? And then we can hear from Mitch, and then the rabbis can chime in.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. I feel grateful to report that overall, I've noticed that there's generally been a lot of respect going on Princeton's campus with regard to difficult conversations, even in the past few months as things have gotten tense and heated on campus and even within the CJL itself. I mean, we are fortunate that students here within the Jewish community come from a wide array of backgrounds and have very different viewpoints on so many different things, including Israel, including the war. And of course, that can lead to tense conversations, uncomfortable situations, even within our own building. But I think that Princeton does a really good job of fostering a culture of A, free speech, and B, respect that comes along with that. We received an email from the dean of the college and some other high up administrators a couple months back that really stood out to me. It was called A Call for Respect and Care. And it was just this sort of beautifully written essay that highlighted that respect and care are values that Princeton holds that are should not be secondary to anything. They need to come first in any conversation because we are all students, members existing in this same community. And I think that sort of value and that consciousness of respect has really driven a lot of the conversations that I've observed happening on this campus. And I do hope that the university continues to just show in very outward and obvious ways that those are Princeton's values and that these are values that any student who wants to call themselves a member of the Princeton community needs to uphold.
Thank you, Julie. Mitch.
Thanks again, everyone, for having me on. We've been much better at Rutgers in terms of dialogue and having difficult conversations after coming back from winter break than it was at the end of the fall semester. At Hillel, we brought in the Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs towards the end of the fall semester to come talk to us about free speech and what's protected under Title IX, Title VI, under First Amendment rights. And we've seen progress specifically within our Hillel student leaders. We've had a group of students be going now every Wednesday for about 6 or 7 hours, just taking shifts, tabling in front of the Student Center on College Ave, which is the immediate campus of the 5 at Rutgers that Hillel and Chabad and most of the Jewish community lives on, to have difficult conversations with people. And for the most part, it's been pretty successful. And we've gotten a lot of people to at least understand the multitude of viewpoints from members of the Jewish community, both on the conflict, the war, on Israel, and how Jews and anti-Semitism are perceived in the country. But I definitely think, in addition to the students on the ground, from a bottom-up perspective, building relationships with people to become allies, we need to see it from the top down, from the administration, and from the leaders of other organizations who are willing to partner with us.
Great. Thank you, Mitch. So Rabbi Reed, Rabbi Steinweth, do you want to pop in and share some thoughts? Rabbi Reed, you
did a great job representing what I would have said, talking about the dialogue table that the Hillel student leaders have started every week. That's been very impactful.
great. Rabbi Gill?
I would only add that, one of the things that we work very hard on accomplishing at the CJL is in terms of addressing the concerns is it's really important that we empower our students to speak in their voice and to take leadership in speaking out really on all fronts, both on the left and on the right. And they're rising to it in really, really impressive ways. Our job is to create the conditions for them to bring out really high level dialogue. And that's the direction that they're moving in. And I think one of the points that I just think is important to emphasize is, because I encounter this all the time, there's generational differences with respect to free speech on campus. I think the students are in general, are very supportive of a culture of free speech. And while many of them are deeply uncomfortable with some of the rhetoric that gets expressed by various groups that they're in opposition to, there's generally the understanding that they have a right to be able to say these things, and that they live in the kind of cognitive dissonance of knowing that these things can be very, very personally hurtful and painful, but understanding that they have a voice and they have the ability to counter those perspectives on campus. And I find that sometimes in speaking to people who are the older generations are very concerned that some of this rhetoric is happening on campus, and are very concerned that the students feel assaulted and completely shut down by this. And in fact, the opposite is true. I think that they really feel energized to want to speak up and engage in a very, very high level conversation around it. Which doesn't mean that there isn't mudslinging and there isn't some unfortunately low-level comments that happen. But I would say in general, to allow the students to rise to it, they really encourage and create some really sophisticated conversations that happen on a regular basis.
I'm really impressed with both the dialogue table and the openness in terms of the students. Rabbi Gill just set me up for this next question, which is clearly there is a disparity between what Jewish students are experiencing on campus and what their parents perceive. And so if you were talking to parents and grandparents about how students are navigating this challenging time, what would you say to them? So Julie, if Mitch, you want to start with us?
I can jump in. The first thing that I want to say in response to that question is, at least in my own experience, I've less so found that there's a disparity between what I'm experiencing and what my parents and my peers' parents are thinking is happening, because often parents are getting information directly from students. They have, their source that's right there on campus, and the stories my parents hear about Princeton are the stories that are coming out of my mouth. And as a result, generally, with a few exceptions, my parents think what I think about Princeton. I think where that disparity begins to happen a bit more is with individuals who don't have a direct connection to someone who is currently on a college campus, or even, don't have a direct connection to someone who is currently on a specific college campus. Like, all I'm saying is my parents know what's happening at Princeton. I can't claim that they know what's happening at Rutgers or anywhere else. And generally, I think that the unfortunate thing that I've observed is that when people who don't have a direct connection to a campus learn something about that campus, it's usually something that's highlighted in a newspaper article, something they briefly see on social media, something they overhear from, a secondary or tertiary source even. And often that's not the full picture of what's going on any given campus. Sometimes it presents, I think, a much more dire view of the state of a campus than what I and my peers actually feel is happening on a day-to-day basis. And as a result, I think can cause, sort of an uproar of concern. And sometimes this concern is merited and sometimes it's not merited as much. So what I would say is if you're anxious about what's going on any particular college campus, talk to us, talk to people who are on those campuses. We can tell you what should be a cause for concern and what maybe you can rest easy about. And I mean, I can only speak on behalf of myself, but I'm always happy to talk to anyone about what I'm seeing at Princeton.
Mitch?
To piggyback off of that and echo something similar, but a little bit different, right? I think there's a very big dichotomy, especially since in a post-COVID world, of what we assume and perceive from the media and from news articles and from second or third hand word of mouth versus the reality of a situation in every facet of life. And I think for parents and grandparents, right, from my background, I went to Jewish day school and yeshiva high school my whole life. Rutgers, my first time in a public school experience with people who aren't necessarily the same. And we have a lot of students like that necessarily. And when you go from a high school of max maybe a few thousand people to a college of 60,000, university of 60,000, you're going to be faced with a lot of diverse opinions and a lot of people who you wouldn't have necessarily met anyone like them before. So, right, an experience that I might have at Rutgers in a community with 6,400 Jewish undergrads and 5,000 Muslim Jewish undergrads, we also have the largest Muslim undergraduate population in the country, which I found out right after October 7th, might be different than someone else who might have had a different experience. And I definitely think that the best way to really get the reality of the situation, what's going on, whether it's anti-Semitism or Jewish life on a college campus, or something as obscure as like the political tide in Wyoming, saying that we're sitting in New Jersey, right? You should ask someone who's on the ground who has a good pulse of the situation. And frankly, when my parents and grandparents and friends see articles or videos put about things going on at Rutgers, they'll send me the link and they're like, Mitch, is this true? And I'll give them an honest answer.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful because there is, particularly through social media, so much information or misinformation being put out there that really having sort of as the students have said, an on-the-ground person really makes a difference. Rabbis, what's your take on this?
I would just add, and I agree with everything that Julie and Mitch said. The very beginning of this webinar, Rabbi Gil and I talked about so many wonderful, positive, amazing things happening within the Hillel on our campuses every single day. And you don't read about that in the newspapers. You don't read about, our incredible Shabbat dinner that we had this past Friday night. You don't hear about the a cappella group that had a performance. You just don't hear about all those things. And so I agree with what Julie and Mitch were saying, that when there is something that hits the news, it's inflammatory. That's why it's in the news, right? That it's going to get people's attention. And it's always best to check in with people who are on the ground, who are actually there, who can tell you if that's reality or if that's an exaggeration, or if it's a reality, but it can be balanced out by so many other things that are happening day to day.
Thank you. And I would only add, one of the things that I would advise, if you don't happen to have a kid going to one of our colleges or to another college, and you really want to get a sense, one of the things is just to remember that, one of the blessings of Hillel's and Chabad's and other Jewish organizations on campus is that they really are involved, and very much our task is to really look after the Jewish community, and not only just the students and looking at the students, but to really establish this really strong and important ambassadorial relationship with university administrations. So rather than immediately writing angry letters to the president of the university or trying to advocate or to agitate or to engage in pressure campaigns, check in with those of us who are the Jewish professionals working on the campus first to find out, how it's going, because we can let you know how it usually the very things that people who don't have direct connections want to agitate for are things we've been working on for a long time. Not only as the professionals, but the students are working on it too, from their connections and their perspectives and their activities as well. So sometimes we feel like we have to rush in and fix everything, when in fact, there's a lot of people who are working really hard on this every single day.
So one of the things we talked about at the very beginning, I think both of you talked about, is the incredible student leadership that you have on your campuses. And I guess what I would hope that you would speak to is, there is a big leap from high school to college, and at college, the opportunity to have leadership experiences is very important. So can all of you talk a little bit about the sort of how you structure these leadership experiences, how you support them, so that when things like October 7th happen, students feel that they're prepared in a way, if you can ever be prepared for something like this, to address them. So I don't know, let's begin with Mitch this time. Talk about your student leadership experiences.
Sure. So currently, I am on the board of 3 organizations on campus. One is our Hillel, where I'm one of the Orthodox community co-chairs. I run a community and events and responsible for all of the engagement there for about 400 or so Orthodox students. And we run, as Rabbi Ray mentioned earlier, 3 daily services among anywhere from 3 to 6 other events, and not including Shabbat, which we're also responsible for. Additionally, I am on the board of 2 other clubs. One is the Jewish Business Club, where we do resume events, LinkedIn workshops, and general interview tips to help build the Jewish culture in the business school, as well as we bring in Jewish speakers to networking opportunities and to learn from experiences. The last club I'm involved in is a club called Tamid, which does finance and pro bono consulting work with Israeli startups to give people a positive experience, both Jews and non-Jews, of the Israeli business ecosystem, where I'm the director of consulting. And I manage consulting teams that do projects with Israeli startups pro bono. And I think I've learned a lot about myself in the past couple months in all of those positions. Specifically, right, we talk about how do you recruit people to keep the pipelines going as a student, right? How do you sell to someone that the role you have this year is so awesome and so great that they should do it next year, and then they can grow up and then they see the path through and they see the growth potential and the opportunities that come from it. We don't really talk about the adversity and the growth you get from there facing as a leader. And I faced a lot of adversity representing people in Hillel, where being part of an amazing board, that I learned a lot about my fellow board members, both with similar and differences of opinions in the past 4 months or 4 or 5, almost 5 months at this point, as well as in the other clubs where people are on the board of clubs that are involving in Israel that don't necessarily understand what's going on. You have to educate them. And building allies has been much more difficult, specifically at Rutgers in the past couple of months, as certain clubs may not want to get involved with Jewish or Israel-tied organizations to not get canceled. But I think the best thing for student leaders, and specifically the high school to college, is how do you learn from your past experiences and effectively failures, right? How do you fail forward? And I think the fact that I've worked with startups the past couple of years has allowed me personally to help bring that sort of transition and adversity experience to allow for myself and my other leaders around me to uplift and support everyone.
Thank you, Mitch. That was great. Julie, from your leadership opportunities.
So I guess I want to start by saying that I entered the realm of CJL leadership at a very interesting time. When I was a first year, I was still at home because we weren't allowed to come to campus because of COVID. And I decided to run for the executive board of the CJL from home, even though I knew no one and I didn't know what was going on. And I ended up, being elected to one of our 5 executive board positions and trying to navigate leading a community that I have had absolutely zero understanding of, and just figuring out all of the little bits and pieces that go into understanding the ways in which a community functions and all the members of the community. And the experience was a wonderful one because I immediately realized that, the CJL infrastructure is built such that students are really supported as leaders, even if they come in as clueless as I was sitting at home in my childhood bedroom. And there's a lot of support to just enable students to get into leadership roles. We have a ton of them for all of our different, CJL groups. The student board is sort of our overarching leadership organization, and then the a cappella group, JLATs, all of these groups have their own boards as well. So a lot of CJL students find themselves in some sort of leadership role throughout their time here. Obviously, it's not been the easiest time to be a Jewish student leader on campus. Being CJL president when October 7th happened was one of, if not the most challenging experiences I've encountered while I've been at Princeton, and also the most educational and meaningful experience. I felt supported by the CJL staff, first of all, but also I think it was very important that there was a culture of student leaders supporting each other that was already embedded in this organization. And that enabled me to, work with my peers to try to deal with all of the challenges that the CJL was facing, that the Jewish community on campus was facing as they came, to try to preempt them at times. And I don't know, if I were giving advice to a high schooler who's considering getting involved in Jewish leadership on campus, I would say do it. Absolutely do it. It, again, probably the most meaningful experience that I've had here at Princeton, and also the experience that's taught me the most, and presented me with the most sort of opportunities to tackle real world challenges in a very supportive and just a very supportive and caring and kind way.
Rabbis, do you want to pop in there?
I'll just say that one of the reasons why I left a very satisfying career as a congregational rabbi to go into Hillel work is because I really believe that these students who are showing leadership on our campuses are the future leaders of the Jewish community. And this is an extraordinary moment in their lives where they're getting their feet wet in terms of actually making impactful decisions that affect a Jewish community, not only on their own campus, but beyond, in how they're affecting others. And so we spend a lot of time developing leadership. Sometimes I watch them make mistakes, which we then have to clean up. But that is absolutely what this is all about. And our students are endlessly blowing me away. They are coming up with innovative ideas for bringing the community together that is often polarized, looking for new avenues to create Jewish experiences that are enriching and affirming. It gives me a lot of hope for the Jewish future that we have this. And so I urge you all to support your Hillels and the Jewish communities on campus, because this really is where the future lies for our people.
Yeah, Rabbi Reed?
I add that getting involved with an organization like Hillel starts before the semester even begins. We always run a Shabbat dinner experience for new students, that they can come and have a Shabbat experience before all the returning students come, so that it's small, they get to know each other, they make friends before the following week when it's so overwhelming with so many people. And this year we're implementing a project that a lot of Hillels do called Fresh Fest, where we're going to have a multi-day experience for incoming students to be able to learn about Hillel and Jewish life on campus. As soon as students start to come to campus, there are ways to get involved. But I would also say after October 7th, we had students who were not in leadership roles, who had never been to Hillel before, ever, who came to Hillel for the first time, seeking community. And we welcome people anytime, at any point, whatever they need. There are seniors who walk through Hillel the first time, the end of their senior year in the spring semester, and we're happy to have them anytime. So you don't have to come and, day one and be there the whole time.
Right, and start, right. So what you're saying really, and thank you, Julie and Mitch, because, as you describe your leadership experiences, and not only that, what you've learned, I agree with Rabbi Gil, you are the future of our Jewish community, and that's so wonderful. But the important piece that no matter where you are on campus and at any moment in your career there, you can walk into the CJL or Hillel and be welcomed and become a part of it. So, there are a bunch of, and Julie teed this question up for me. There are students now who have applied to college. We know that some students have even changed where they're applying to college as a result of all that's appeared in the press. And in this college search, what guidance would you share, especially, when you're a prospective student, you only get a taste of, what Jewish life might be on campus. What are some of your suggestions for those students to help them navigate that journey?
I'll go first. My biggest piece of advice for anyone who's thinking about coming to campus is to visit that campus. If you can, come for a Friday night, see what they do. Most Hillel's Friday night's the biggest thing that they do each week. So it gives you a sense. If you're at a campus where they have 20 people at their Shabbat dinner, if you're at a campus where they have 200 people at their Shabbat dinner, maybe you're more comfortable with 20, but you have to find the place that's the right fit for you. And students are honest. When you come to campus and you talk to students, they're going to tell you the truth. Well, we do have this problem here, but we have other great things here. So that's always my biggest piece of advice, is to come visit and talk to people directly.
Anyone else? Students?
Yeah, I can chime in on that. I definitely think that when it comes to weighing decisions now, take as many pieces of information as you can from people who are in the shoes and the experiences that you want for yourself or for your child or for your grandchild. And for me personally, the best way I was able to decide to come to Rutgers, given with all the options I had, was visiting the campus for a Shabbat, doing a tour, and talking to a lot of people in different areas of interest that I had career-wise, right? I'm in the business school now. I was debating doing something in the medical field. I talked to people in both areas in a bunch of different places, and that's how I formulated a decision. And the truth of it is, it's your decision to make if you're the student, especially when it comes down to it will be your experience. And your friends from high school might have one idea of where they want to go. You might want to go elsewhere, and that's okay. And you have to truly make the best decision for who you are, what you want right now, and what you think you're going to want throughout those 4 years.
I'll jump in here as well. So I'm a campus tour guide, and I was giving my usual Monday afternoon tour this afternoon. I always introduce myself, explain that I'm very involved with Jewish life on campus, all of that. After the tour, as has been happening over the past few months, the Jewish family or Jewish families who happen to be on my tour will come up to me and they'll ask me about Jewish life on campus. Today I had a girl who I think was a junior in high school come up, and she saw the Magen David that I was wearing. She said, "Oh my gosh, you wear that here? You're like, that's okay here? Like, I can't wear mine at high school." And it, first of all, made my heart ache for her, that, that was the experience that she was having. But I was also able to say to her, yes, I do walk around campus wearing my Magen David, having like my Jewish identity, my Jewish involvement known, my Zionist beliefs known, and I feel comfortable existing as a student on this campus like that. And that was something that this girl who was visiting was able to observe, just by me existing on campus. So certainly visiting, staying for Shabbat, going on a tour, all of those things are useful. But also I recognize that a lot of students aren't necessarily able to visit the campuses that they're interested in. And if you're in that position, reach out to the Hillel or to the Chabad or to whatever Jewish organization is there, because I can assure you that there are people who would be happy to jump on the phone with you to talk to you over text or email, whatever it is, and tell you about their experiences. And the one last thing that I'll highlight is, going back to some things that we said earlier in this conversation, if you see a news article about something negative related to Israel or Judaism happening on the campus that you're interested in, that doesn't mean that you have to immediately cross it off of your list. Make sure that you're also, doing your research about what the community is like and all the positive aspects of Jewish community that you might encounter there, because unfortunately nowadays we're not really going to find campuses that are 100% perfect, that have never had some sort of protest or anti-Semitic incident or something. But it's really important to gain an understanding of how the negative things balance out with the many, many positive aspects of being a Jewish student on whatever campus you're considering.
Thank you. So we have a number of questions related to the relationship to Muslim students and the relationship between Jewish students and Muslim students. In particular, questions regarding you live together, you have classes together. How do you think Muslim students are having similar kinds of conversations like we're having this evening with their communities? When you are living down the hall from someone, how does that play itself out? Even if you're living, I don't know if you live on off-campus housing, you're still in classes together.
I'll jump in and just say that, unfortunately, I think after October 7th, there's been a lot of sort of going to our opposite ends of the universe. And there's been a lot of concern about how we bridge the divide between the Jewish and the Muslim communities on campus. Although I will say the following, certainly speaking to some Muslim people, there's mostly just a lot of concern about Islamophobia that Muslims are having. On Princeton's campus, and this isn't speaking directly to our imam on campus, the vast majority of the Muslims are not Palestinians. They are actually mostly South Asian and Asian, and actually don't feel a direct immediate connection. And in fact, the majority of the students who are agitating against Israel are not Muslim. And I think that's an important thing to pay attention to, that the tensions actually don't really play out in the way that people imagine them, as being Jews against Muslims. It really doesn't work that way. I think it's actually a very diverse group of students who are agitating against Israel right now. There are some Muslim students who are a part of it, certainly, but I think it's a much more complicated situation on campus than that.
Thank you for sharing that. That's something I'm not sure everybody was aware of. And that's very interesting information. Anybody else want to share about the relationships between, again, living together, going to class together?
Yeah, so I personally live off campus and I only live with Jewish roommates because I'm Shomer Shabbat, Shomer Kashrut, and those are requirements I needed to have people in the house with. But I still have Muslims in class with me, in clubs with me, who I see at the gym, who I see at the bars, who I see at football games, and a lot of other events that just go by your day-to-day life. And as I said earlier, Rutgers has the largest undergraduate Muslim population in the country as well. And I'd like to think that there's similar dialogues and discourse going on within the Muslim community as we're having in the Jewish community. And I definitely think that everything you're reading online isn't necessarily the truth that's happening day to day on the campus. I know personally, I had 2 Muslim friends that were in my study group for my investment analysis class last semester, and neither of them had necessarily ties to Palestine or any of the Palestinian people because that wasn't their country of origin. And we talked about it a little bit, understood my concerns, understood that I had a lot going on, especially working part-time for an Israeli company. And I really appreciated that. And we were able to have dialogue, and it actually led to us having conversational talks about halal versus kosher among different similarities that we wouldn't necessarily think on the surface. So I definitely think that doing your homework, and people should really focus on their own experiences. And if you're not on a campus, talk to someone or talk to people who are on the campus to really understand what's going on.
Julie?
I really don't have much to add there. I mean, I think, you know, I have peers, I have friends who are Muslim, and at sometimes it's helpful and beneficial to start these conversations. Other times, you know, we don't need to be talking about the war in every space at every time of day. And I think that there are moments in which I choose not to engage in certain conversations, because that's simply just doesn't need to be the topic of the topic of conversation at any given time. When I'm working on a project with someone who I know has different viewpoints on Israel than I do, maybe I don't need to start that conversation in the middle of our group project. Maybe I can save that conversation for another day. But I also think that generally you know, Rabbi Gill mentioned that we had a trivia night with the Muslim Students Association and the conservative minyan at the CJL the other night. There's been other opportunities like that just to sort of be in space and in community together. And generally, I've found that things are pretty calm, and there's certainly not been hostility between Jewish and Muslim students on campus.
So Rabbi Reed, you did testify before Congress about anti-Semitism on campus. And, you know, can you, in light of all that's been going on, can you sort of share what that was like? What kind of support you felt you got? Some of the other, you know, aspects of being Jewish students on campus.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. But before I do, I just want to say, in terms of the last question, we do have students at Rutgers who are Palestinian, and they are some of the students who are leading some of the anti-Israel activity. But it's not that all of the students involved in anti-Israel activity are Palestinian. I would also say that I had a student come to me in the fall semester when they found out that their Muslim roommate was posting anti-Israel things on social media. And how are they supposed to live with this person? There definitely are different experiences that different students have. Like I said at the very beginning, you can have a student who goes through all 4 years wearing a yarmulke, doesn't experience any anti-Semitism, and then you can have someone their freshman year who, and this happened a couple years ago, who discovers that his roommate's an anti-Semite. And what's he going to do? So it's very different experiences for different individuals. My experience in talking with students when I testified before Congress, I told the story of certain students, and this was well before October 7th. This was October 2022. And I talked about how there were students specifically at the Rutgers Newark campus who felt that they had to tuck their Jewish star necklace into their shirt, unlike Julie, and really couldn't be comfortable wearing a Jewish star while they went to class at the Rutgers Newark campus. And Richie Torres is a congressman who was on the panel that I was testifying to. He himself is an African-American supporter of Israel, but he's also gay. And he said, so you're telling me that Jews have to remain in the closet, that Jews are closeted about their Judaism? And I said, yes, in that particular case, that is true. So I don't think any of us can speak for all Jews on campus, all Jews at Rutgers, all Jews at Princeton. There are different experiences that different people have. And, you know, Richie Torres' response to that story I told of that one student who had that experience was very sympathetic. And in general, the members of Congress were very sympathetic. And I just want to emphasize that different students have different experiences, and it's not that everything is as bad as you see in the press, but it's not that everything is unicorns and rainbows and there's no problems whatsoever. So I just want to make sure we understand there's nuance in this conversation, and we're not painting with a wide brush one way or another.
That's great. Rabbi Gill, you mentioned something at the beginning that there's a question in the chat about, and that is the relationships between students vis-a-vis between Jewish students, different groups of Jewish students vis-a-vis the current overall situation in Israel and Gaza. And I wonder if you could all sort of talk about how that's played out in the context of Jewish life on campus.
Yeah, thank you. It's an important question, and it's complicated. It's very, very complicated. The Jewish community, like everyone else in our world now, is divided. There are strong political opinions on either side. I'll share with you my sort of meta concern about this. The pain of this era that we're going through is, there are those who are kind of very strongly, pro-Israel, Zionist, supportive of Israel completely and strong and empowered and loud, and that's incredibly important that we have that. Then there's a much sort of wider array of students who are somewhere in the middle, who have a lot of questions about the current government of Israel, have a lot of questions about human rights issues, are deeply concerned about some of the headlines they're seeing about the loss of life in Gaza, who are profoundly troubled, and are concerned that they want to be able to be supportive of Israel. They don't want to, they're not interested in being anti-Israel, but they also want to be able to have conversations where they can speak genuinely of their deep concerns about Israel's policies. And sometimes I think that there is some feelings that they're afraid they're going to be shut down because there's so much on the line right now, because Israel is at war, because there's hostages, there's Israeli hostages, there's so much that we have to fight for, that I think I'm not speaking about the far left or the far right students now. It's really the students who are somewhere in the middle, middle to middle right, middle left, who are afraid to weigh in. And so we're working very hard at the CJL to create a space for those students to actually have those conversations where they can feel comfortable asking the difficult questions, to get into the nuances and the subtleties. And it's not easy because students on the extremes of both sides will attack and want to shut down and even silence or erase those middle ground positions. But in my position, and I think actually, in general, Hillel is a pluralist organization. We have to work very, very hard to hold the space for those students who are representing the majority, not just on campus, but of the Jewish community, who want to be able to have these conversations. And that's getting shut out. And I'm spending a lot of my energy and focus on making sure we have that. And so are our student leaders. And I'm sure that's happening on other campuses as well.
Does anybody else want to sort of address that? Okay, so I have two last questions. There's a lot, we hear a lot about the fact that Jews and Israelis are white and privileged, and Palestinians are people of color and therefore oppressed. How do we have these conversations? They're all in an educational institution together. How do those conversations get started and are held in a respectful manner?
I'm going to jump in and say that we have a student who's a sophomore, Joe Gindi, who just testified before a congressional committee last week. And he talked about being called a European colonizer when his family's from Aleppo, Syria. So I think we need to educate. What is the Jewish community comprised of? Who are the types of Jews? There are Jews of color. There are African-American Jews, Asian American Jews. There are Jews of all different kinds of backgrounds. And I think education is really important, and conversations about that with faculty, administration, and with the DEI offices.
Great. Thank you, Rabbi, for jumping in. Anyone else want to add to that?
A similar point, education. I mean, we have a very significant anti-Semitism workshop that we do at the CJL, and we teach in all different faculty, administration, student groups, where we address these misperceptions and these questions. And we get a lot of people who are very grateful because they really, we in the Jewish community think people understand, and a lot of people have absolutely no idea who Jews are, and they don't realize that the majority of Israelis are of color. You know, so it's all about education and creating dialogue and conversation.
So you talked at the very beginning about all the positive aspects of Jewish life on campus and what students can gain from a connection to Jewish life. We're just about to end our workshop. And so, you know, with your crystal balls, what do you see as some of the positive ways students can experience Jewish life on campuses and move forward in these, you know, some challenging times?
I'll chime in here. So, right, yeah. So I think the way really to promote the good stuff and positive Jewish experience on campus, really branding, right? Rabbi Reed and Rabbi Steinleff talked about all the amazing programs that are going on in light and completely irrelevant to all this stuff, to everything that's happened since October 7th. Why don't we promote more? Why don't we promote more of the social events we're doing, or what we're building, or our rising leaders, or just general stuff that we would promote if none of this happened, and while still acknowledging all the work that we have to do to allow people in a multicultural campus and a pluralistic Hillel space to understand the anti-Semitic and anti-Zionistic rhetoric, and that people might have differences on what those mean, right? I don't necessarily think at this point it's easy to disassociate those two terms, but other people think differently. And how do we have a dialogue? What does that mean to one person versus another? And how do we allow people to still live the lives they want to live while dealing with all this going on, right? I still have to go to class for 15 hours a week. I'm still working a part-time job for 20 hours a week, right? Julie and I are both very involved in a bunch of different on-campus organizations, right? Then how do you get homework done? How do you have a social life? Among many other things, right? How do you still live the life you want to live with everything going on? And I think the best way to do that is to brand ourselves in a way that we are going to continue to do what we have been doing that has made us so successful. And that's it.
Thank you, Mitch. Julie.
I agree with everything you said, Mitch, but I'll just add on by saying I think it's really important to share student stories. I mean, I'll just say I'm looking toward my graduation in just a little under 3 months now, and I can say confidently that my best friends at Princeton, my most formative leadership and educational experiences, and the memories that I'll probably look back on the most when I think about what my college experience was, have all happened in this building that I'm sitting in right now, in the CJL building. And that's the reality of my Princeton experience. And I think that making sure that people understand how impactful Jewish life on campus is for the students involved in it is truly fundamental to, you know, encouraging other students to get involved, and just showing people that campuses can be a really, really great space to learn and to grow Jewishly, and to just immerse yourself in one of the most, if not the most diverse and also sort of condensed Jewish experiences and communities and opportunities that you'll probably ever have in your entire life.
Thank you. Rabbi Reed and Rabbi Gil, any sort of last thoughts?
I just want to say that the thing that inspires me every day to wake up in the morning and come to work is the students, and being with students who are proud to be Jewish, who are learning about Judaism, even students who come in the door and say they really don't know much, but they want to learn. They're curious. They have a thirst for connecting with their identity. And the work that we can do to help them grow in their identity is the most meaningful work. And to see that, and to see proud Jews who are the future leadership of the Jewish community in America, is inspiring to me every day.
Thank you.
And Esther said it perfectly. I can't add anything more. You want hope for the Jewish future, just come check out and hang out with our students at any one day, and you'll realize that we do indeed have a bright future.
Thank you all. Thank you to the people who are participating. Thank you for joining this evening. There will be a recording of this program available on the Jewish Community Foundation website later this week. Thank you to Rabbi Reed and to Rabbi Stonloff and to Julie Levy and Mitchell Wolf. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And this really was a terrific program. We really appreciate your time and your reflections. I want to thank the Jewish Federation of Princeton Mercer Bucks, Mark Merkovitz, who is our co-sponsor this evening. I want to mention that there are two websites, hillel.org and Tribal Talk, which we will send in the follow-up email, that are good websites to look at to learn more about what's going on Jewish college campuses. Please join us. We will have an investment summit on April 16th, where you can learn about how the Jewish Community Foundation operates and how we manage donor advised funds. So we certainly hope that you stay abreast of our work and the work of the Jewish Federation of Princeton Mercer Bucks. And finally, you will receive a post-event survey by email this week. Please complete it. We really use these surveys in planning future programs. So again, thank you to everyone who's been here, and thank you to our participants.